Suave afternoon, Suave afternoon. This is Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality, life coach, psychotherapist, author, and creator. Hope you guys having a suavelous day.
Yeah, and with that, let's commence to pay.
Okay, I'm so suavelous, you so suavelous.
Together we can fix the trauma that's befallen us.
Divine social interactions remains marvelous.
Mind-blowing, suavelicious talk, higher consciousness. But think, letting at your heart speed trouble, Dr. Brother Suave.
Divine light get you double.
Greetings. This is Dr. Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality, life coach, psychotherapist, author, creator, and host of social therapy with Dr. Brother Suave. Listen, it is such a hot, but beautiful, hot August 23rd, 2003. I just want to thank God for allowing me to see a day I've never seen before, waking me up for another day to get it right, another day to tell my friends and family that I love them. And for those who are tuning in, I love you guys. Listen, thank you so much for tuning in for this. This is, again, season 5, episode 8. So, again, I'm just so happy. Listen, before I get started, I just want you guys to share, like, and subscribe. Text and tell people about the show tonight. Tell all your friends, because we're going to really have a mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening experience and show tonight, talking about our very, very controversial topic. So, disclaimer. So, again, I just want to let you know that tonight's topic is going to be very touchy. It might be even offensive. It might be even offensive. It may trigger some emotions. It may hit some emotional minefields. But the bottom line is, I'm trying to prepare you and let you know it's going to be a very touchy subject. However, it will be a mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening experience. But most importantly, this is something that needs to be discussed. So tell your friends and family about tonight's topic: rape, trauma, and the church. So just letting you know, tonight we're going to have some church, just not the church you used to. So before I get into tonight's topic, I'm just going to share a few of my thoughts about my personal beliefs and transparency, empowerment, and honesty, and how it the benefits of being truthful and honest, because lies and deception creates a lot of problems. And what happens is, when lying, deception, and manipulation becomes normal, therefore the patterns of repetition and insanity cycle generates our generational curses. So we have to be understanding and mindful of what truth is. So truth is associated with transparency, meaning you need to be honest about situations and learning and about sharing, because it shows integrity and character of an individual. Okay? So when you put pride aside, it creates the best interest of your circumstances. And so at that point, you be mindful of those strongholds that happens in your everyday life. Because if you pretend they don't happen, trust, that's when the devil happens to get you, when you pretend these things are not real. And so what happens is, that's okay, it's not an issue. So be mindful of strongholds, because what they happen to when you pretend, they show up and show out. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're exposed as a liar, deceiver, or manipulator. So this is just my belief. It's just important to be straightforward and honest, so therefore you can get the best possible results. Okay. So I say all that dealing with rape, trauma, and the lack of addressing the things that are real. So just getting into this very, very uncomfortable topic of rape, trauma, and the church. So this is not going to be long, because I have to be mindful of the time. I have to be mindful of that 60 minutes, and I try to get it in there, because I do want sometimes these to be able to show on other platforms. But if it goes past that, we won't be able to rebroadcast. That's what it is. So and also, I don't want to force feed you guys all this information dealing with this very sensitive topic. But trust, I know people are very sensitive when you're talking about anything dealing with church, God, mental health, politics, and religion. So I already know. So when we're talking about, in this case, rape, trauma in the church, So, and also for the record, I am not here to drag any pastors or talk about ministers raping people and getting away with it. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm not dragging about men and women of the cloth. That's not what I'm going to be discussing. I'm just going to be discussing some of the sexual assaults that happen to people and who they go for and where they go to. Because so many have experienced trauma through sexual assaults and rape. And for the most part, when people are experiencing some type of trauma or crisis, we all know what they tend to do. They go to the church. They go to the shepherd. They go in there to get help. They go in there to get direction. They go in there to get answers. And my thing is, I think that a lot of the church, being so politically correct, but also not necessarily prepared to address these issues. And these things are happening all the time. And we know that like every 68 seconds, someone is getting raped. You know, 1 in 6 women are being raped. 1 in 33 guys are being raped as children, young adults, or adults. And these numbers are high. And it's over what 400. Let me look. I got some 436,634 people a year on the average are being raped. And the thing is, 70% of those people are people that they know. So when you think about knowing, close proximity, a lot of times it's people that they are related to. You know? So think about that. Think about that. So we know that when people are coming to the church to have some understanding, we know the church, the Bible is there for instruction, guidance, and telling who God is. However, the leaders of the congregation, they just need to be more informed. That's just my opinion. They need to be more informed and to prepare to deal with these everyday things that we all deal with life. We all dealing. So we got to stop being so politically correct on these things. Because by all of us avoiding it, specifically, I'm talking about the church, when we avoid these things, I think we do more damage. I think we do more damage. And I know it's uncomfortable, but again, sometimes the church, and that's one of the biggest organizations in our community that people go to. So if the church don't address it, who will? I will. Dr. Brother Suave, the mind-blowing, thought-provoking, eye-opening on their personality, the life coach, psychotherapist, author. Your divine social therapist, the one who is not afraid to address these issues. And so this is why a lot of times, just keeping it 100, is why when I talk about these very touchy and sensitive topics, I don't bring a guest on because I don't want them feeling uncomfortable, because I'm not going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to talk about them and keep it 100. And again, I don't want nobody coming on and say, I don't want to say it. And I know when it comes to sensitive topics, people feel uncomfortable talking about the church, religion, politics, all those things, mental health. It makes people feel very uncomfortable. But again, I'm not uncomfortable about talking about these things because I believe in transparency. And my philosophy is transparency equates empowerment. So please feel free to comment and comment and share your experiences. Listen, what I have is a question. A question is to you guys. What do people do when they experience a crisis in their lives? What do they do? I know, but I'm going to address it later. So, but prior to their crisis, people be out there doing their thing, out there living their best life, enjoying their life, with their family, friends, relationships. They putting funny memes. They just doing their things. And this is what I'm talking about, accountability and who they go to. But the minute something happens, they go to the church. Like everybody will say they may not believe in God, but the fear is just the same. So God, they may not even believe. But as soon as something happens again, crisis, get some disease, life-threatening accident, they call on God. Oh God, please have mercy on me. And we all know that's human nature. That's what people do. That's what they do. When they start having these crises, they go straight to God. And you start seeing the posts start changing. You start seeing things, posts dealing with how people treat them. They start putting posts on Bible verses. They start listening to church music. They praise and worship. You know, they doing all their things. They driving, listening, and they think, and they going to the church and the leaders to get guidance. This is where they're going. You know, that's what they do. They go, and I'm not making a mockery. I'm just telling you because I know, just like you know, this is what people do. People do this stuff. This is what they do. So trust. I'm talking about human behavior, and I'm not making a mockery. But again, they go and they want prayers. They giving testimonies. They want answers. They want direction. I just feel sometimes the church should be more progressive and have more resources for the people that's coming from the streets and coming from the outside into the church for directions. And not just have Christian counselors who's just going to go in and pray for them. Having more trauma-informed clinicians in there. And listen, you got a lot of people out there doing private practice. I really doubt that if they sit there and had some collaboration with some of their members who are professionals and have those resources, say, listen, we got some people who do this, and you can send them over there. You know how when they, and I don't know if it's strategic, I'm just going to say on the positive, say they're just trying to get more members to be followers of Christ. But the same way they get all your information and set you up and tell you to go in the back, and they get all your information and set you up for a Christian membership. When you going up there praying and they talking about some of the things, and that pastor hear what you're saying or what you want them to pray about, they can send you in the back and another room saying, hey, listen, this person is in need of this. They just experienced this. Now, everybody's not going to tell their story, but sometimes people will share what they experienced, and a professional could be able to address those issues. Okay? And I'm just going to tell you something about, again, being so politically correct. We got to stop that. We got to stop. So I'm just going to share a situation about politically correct and being afraid, society being afraid to address taboo issues. So I was, this was a while back. AIDS was just coming out, and my community had a lot of resources when it comes to having their like a TV station, and they had those things, and it had been out a few years. So I wanted to have my own television show, and I remember doing a proposal to the commission, and they thought it was a great idea, but I had to go ahead and do a proposal to the individuals who was responsible for doing the broadcast. So everything was organized, everything was written out, and everything. And they liked the idea of talking about community issues. So he was asking me, the person asked me, well, what are some of the topics you're going to talk about? They said, oh, I like that. That sounds good. Great. That sounds good. Whoa. I don't think that's too touchy. That's too taboo. We shouldn't talk about those things. And what it was I wanted to talk about HIV and AIDS. Yes, that's right. Something that significantly impacted my community and this nation. You know, I'm talking about HIV and AIDS. That's something that we needed to address, but it was too taboo. And it negatively impacted friends, associates, my mentor in college, all those things. But it was declined because they felt it was inappropriate to talk about HIV and AIDS. So again, as I say, we got to stop being so politically correct. We have to stop this politically correct mindset and address our needs and address and as well as the information that's ultimately needed to empower us. So this is the reason why I believe in ownership. And again, when I discuss these controversial issues, I just like to do it alone because I don't want nobody feeling uncomfortable. I don't want anybody feeling embarrassed. I don't want anybody even thinking that I'm speaking for them. And again, people are also politically correct. Sometimes people are afraid to confront something on air that they don't disagree. They're just like, you know, and so again, you got to be able to put this embarrassment and shame aside for the purpose of looking out for the big picture. And I say that is because We all flawed. We all done things in our life that makes us feel embarrassed and ashamed, humiliated. But I'm gonna tell you, my personality, I believe in transparency equates to empowerment. So things that may be humiliating, may be embarrassing, may be shame and making us feel guilty, those are the things that are motivation to me, because when I have these mistakes and shortcomings, I like to share them because I'm strong enough to deal with the embarrassment. I'm strong enough to deal with the shame. So for me, I can open up and talk about those things, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have wrote this book that I wrote. My very first book was called Lust, Child, Children, Born Out of Lust, Not Love. And again, this was a very, very dark time in my life. It was a moment that I was embarrassed, me being a figure in the community, me being a therapist, a family man, but I had to tell the story. I put the shame aside. I put the guilt aside. I put the embarrassment aside, because with other people, that's a closely associated, no, that's directly connected to being a liar and a manipulator. But for me, that was motivation. And guess what? 50% of my 50% of the people who purchased that book, as you can see in the background, no, it's on the, yeah, there you go, on the background right there, were men. And they was able to get some insight, they was able to get some understanding, and they was able to get empowered as a result of somebody telling a story that was just like theirs. So again, it was an opportunity for me to tell the story. So a lot of times, I know sometimes we like to be optimistic, but sometimes we got to be realistic about some of the things that we are having to deal with on an everyday life, because we all are flawed. We all make mistakes. But if we pretend that life is perfect, and when the real life situations arise, it becomes too uncomfortable to address. So what we do is we avoid, like the fight or flight. We avoid those things. We want everything to be happy and glory. We want everything to be happy and comfortable, so we can talk about these issues that we all struggle with each and every day of our life. But we're afraid to talk about it. We only want to talk about things that are not traumatic. But guess what? We all have some form of trauma in our life. And so in order for us to get some healing, we have to address our trauma. We have to address the things that make us feel comfortable. We have to stretch ourselves sometimes. We can't always avoid these things. And when I look at, I remember being in seminary. And of course, no matter where I go, it can be in family, relationships, education, I'm going to always start something. Again, that's why I always say I'm the mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening experience. And I remember being in seminary, and I'm telling you, it was very politically correct there. A lot of times people will say things, the normal tradition of saying things that it's like we do, like it's almost like role playing. As I'm talking about issues of the church, God, or whatever, how I am in private is how I'm in public, how I'm in the church, how I'm not. But a lot of times when people are talking about church or in that environment, their voice started to change, amen. They started to use different words, amen. And they start having a different demeanor, amen. And next thing you know, you're thinking that's the character of a person going to church, amen. And they don't always seem authentic. And next thing you know, again, we see these people every day on the street, on the videos, doing everything. This is not the language. This is not how they talk. This is not how they speak. This is not how they act. No. So again, we got to start being politically correct and be transparent and real about things that we deal with. And these things just, sometimes it's just too uncomfortable. We got to stop pretending. And even in the church, I think, again, I remember somebody told me, they say, Brother Suave, you should take that book to the church. I guarantee the pastor love to talk about that book, Lust, Child, Children, Born Out of Lust, Not Love. I said, well, it sounds good. That's your opinion. But trust, ain't nobody going to say something to shake up the things, as I call it, disturbing the peace. because there's peace up in there. It's peace feeling uncomfortable. Feeling comfortable about everybody having all these babies in the church, but there ain't no husbands. Again, you're seeing all these babies, but we're having a lot of baptisms. That's something. So we know those things are not being addressed. So if those things not going to be addressed, there's no way they're going to talk about children born out of lust and not love. There's no way we're going to talk about those specific issues that's directly connected to generational curses. We're not going to do it. So again, I know that we're not going to do it. That's why I say I like to talk about these things, because people are uncomfortable, and I'm just not uncomfortable about these things. So obviously in the church, we have a lot of recycled sermons that we discuss the same particular subjects decade in and decade out. And obviously, I'm not seeing enough changes in our community. Not like I said, because it seems like we don't want to talk about these things. We talk about, again, the greatness of David, but we don't talk about the assaults that David had on Bathsheba. Again, these are a lot of things we won't talk about. We don't talk about the trauma and rape and the taking away of the rights through violence in the Bible. We don't talk about that stuff. We shy away from those things. Yes, I get it. I know why we don't, because we feel uncomfortable. But sometimes we got to stretch ourselves and talk about it. And I know it makes us feel uncomfortable. But we only want the happy moments. We only want the moments to make us feel good. We don't want to make the congregation feel uncomfortable. We want to praise and worship. We want to have the Holy Ghost. We want to talk about things that make us feel good. But let me tell you something. Feeling good is not always the best. We need to be convicted. We need to have some issues of feeling bad about what we're doing. We need to feel uncomfortable so we can feel convicted, because we have made feeling comfortable of doing all the bad things a normality. It's become normal. People, they don't feel uncomfortable going to get the child baptized. They don't feel uncomfortable coming in their church without not being married. It ain't no shame. And I'm not sitting there saying we're trying to shame people, but we still have to talk about these things. And almost every episode I talk about, anything go unaddressed, it progressively gets worse. So we have to be mindful. So if we don't address these issues, things will get worse. And we see it. Like when we talk about over 75% of children born out of wedlock, it wasn't close to that 50, 60, 70 years ago, because people had a level of pride when it comes to want to do the right things, had convictions, they had values, they had morals. But it seems like these things have changed. These mores, these generational value systems. And now we got over 75%. And people are not shamed about how we look on people doing any and everything on these videos. No shame or whatever. But again, I'm going to get back on topic. So anything I say that we got to stop being politically correct, and we have to start feeling uncomfortable. Again, we got to get past just always wanting the happy moments. So, again, I'm going to talk about these moments that we need to address. And it's, again, these topics, these things, because when we don't address things, when it starts touching home base, then we want to start crying out for help. Then we want to start saying we didn't went too far. People are hurting, and we got to be more proactive. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a quick station identification, and we'll come back talking about rape, trauma, and the church. Suave afternoon, Suave afternoon, Suave afternoon. This is Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality, life coach, psychotherapist, author, and creator. So it is so many benefits to being proactive. I remember during the recession, I would hear people saying, listen, I need a job. And they wouldn't hire people who need it. And the person, they hired a person who had a job and they applied for another job as opposed to, I don't have a job.
That's time to look for a job is when you already have one.
Yes. And again, Brother Frederick was saying this, I try not to get so caught up on religious philosophy and how spiritual are, but a foundation is so important because it gives you some morals and values, no matter if you're a Muslim, a Catholic, or a Jehovah's Witness, or a Christian, or a Baptist, or whatever. You have to have respect. You can't do that. You can't do that stuff. And so we teach them emotional intelligence, teach them how to think about things before they react. Can't be impulsive. These are some of the learned behaviors as you listen. And just remember, great minds reach great places. I love you. I mean it. Bye-bye. Back with Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, talking about tonight's topic, rape, trauma, and the church. And again, we were just discussing some things. And again, rape, trauma is serious, and we got to be able to touch bases with these things. I know it's touchy, but we got to talk. We got to talk about it. We got to be able to chop up these things. These things are real. As I told you, over 400,000 people are being raped. 1 out of every 6 women are being raped. 1 out of 33 men, 1 in every 33 men are being raped. And 70% of those people are people they know. And it could be family or non-family. But these are the things that we have in this information. And again, everybody's on the streets. They're going into the church because the church is empty. So therefore, it ain't this church is going to the streets. It's the streets are coming inside the church. So we don't address these taboo issues, addressing these issues. Guess what we do? We compromise our children. Yes. So if you won't do it for yourself, do it for the children. So I say, what about our children? Are we going to continue to avoid discussing these issues, therefore allowing our children to experience the same trauma that we experience? Because we afraid to talk about these issues. Yeah, it may be very uncomfortable, but you got to shake that off and talk about these things. May not be able to go into all the details, but you got to be able to be strategic and be able to have a skill enough to be able to just talk about these things with your children. Because if you don't, children be very vulnerable to being exploited. And we got to be able to talk about them because we have a cruel world out here, a very evil world. So we have to teach our children about learning about boundaries, and we got to start teaching about good touch and bad touch and teach them about when anybody did do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, they can tell someone. They can tell their family and teach them. Don't let anybody tell them, don't tell nobody. Because again, from a spiritual perspective, this free will thing, trust people use their free will to sexually assault and rape children. I didn't pull up any statistics on that because it just made me feel uncomfortable. But again, it happens to children. We all know it. It's a lot of, like I said, it's a sick world out there. It's a very dangerous world out there. It's just a world out there that's evil, and we have to prepare. So it's your responsibility to teach them, even if the system or the church fails them, because there are certain things that we need to discuss with our children. And the thing is, I talked about, it was an episode that I talked about on human trafficking, sex trafficking, and the number one place that recruiters were in the church, because they saw all the vulnerable people. Think about it. Like I said, when people have experienced rape or some crisis or trauma, what they do? The person can spot and they go up there, oh God, and they pray and they go up there, give their testimony, give their life to Christ. But people can see them because they ride in the pew and they you know, if somebody see their body language, they talk to them and they sometimes disclose what they're going through. That makes them vulnerable. And now they already experienced one trauma, and next thing they experience another trauma dealing with these predators inside. You know? So again, we have to be mindful of this stuff. And remember, as I say, those recruiters are right there. You know, and like I said, I didn't want to talk about the try to bash any people in the cloth talking about. I just want to talk about church being more prepared, because we have a lot of people that's hurt and experienced sexual trauma and rape that's in the church. So I'm not going to be here trying to throw men and women, you know, when it comes to assaulting, manipulating them, and the sexual assaulting, but we all know what happens. Okay, so again, like I said, we know those things happen in the church, but they also happen. They happened in the history. They happened in the past. There are a lot of biblical references that discuss sexual assaults of both men and women in the Bible. But again, this is just a little things I'm just bringing up, and you can do your research, because in Judges 19 it discusses about Lot and some of the sexual indiscretions that happened. So again, those things are in the Bible. It's in there. All you do is research, but we don't want to talk about it. Say, we like to talk about the feel-good stories, the stories of redemption, but we don't talk about those dark places. So one of the things I recommend that you do is go to Judges 19 and read the chapter. Okay. And one of the things, it was a book that I had, if I can find it. It was a book that I recommend when it comes to dealing with some of the issues that's dealing with the church and sexual misconduct and narratives. Because a lot of times when things happen to us, a lot of times we say, where's God? Why did he let this happen? But we forget the free will of man. And so the book is called, it was written in 2017. It's called The Absence of God in Biblical Narratives, you know, and it's by Leah Schultz, you know. So again, The Absence of God in Biblical Narratives. It's written in 2007. So again, it talks about it and breaks it down, all the biblical, and it gives all the details. Again, a lot of times our shepherds don't talk about those things. And again, these are things that's going on every day outside. It's everything that's impacting our lives. And I just think that we got to get to the point that we able to address those things. And we got to stop avoiding and pretending that this stuff is not happening. Because a lot of times, man, people are hurt. They're damaged. They have been going through HE hockey stick themselves. And we got to stop it. I remember Martin Luther King once said, nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscious stupidity. You hear that? Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscious stupidity. So let's So let's shepherds of the church, let's use your intelligence and your anointing to bring some healing and hope to people. Let them feel comfortable that they're not just going there and getting a prayer, because we all know faith without works is dead. These people coming in and they you know, we got this culture thinking is we just gonna pray. Nah, you gotta do a little more work. You understand? You gotta do some work. There are people out there that can help you address your emotional, psychological, traumatic issues. You know, so I know just because a lot of our leaders, our ministers and women, men and women of the cloth, you have struggles too. And it's okay. You can be transparent, and I think, and I believe, my opinion is that some of you guys have just as much pain and trauma in the pulpit that there is in the pew. Because I've seen it, you've seen it, and what I said, discussed at the beginning. When people have trauma experience and experience some type of hardship, they go to the church. And if they stay consistent, they develop and they move up and they find a place and they end up getting into the ministry. And sometimes they get their own congregation. But sometimes think of where it started. Trauma. And since sometimes you guys have experienced this, what do you think the congregation is experiencing? It's just like my profession, for example. I remember 14 years old, this is what I wanted to do. But I remember being in grad school, having a whole bunch of older people. And when we was really discussing certain things, they got into our profession as a result of some traumatic experience. And again, some people go to the church, some people go get themselves educated on something that they experienced. When you look at some paraprofessionals who were substance abuse users, and then once they recovered, they got into the profession. So sometimes it's human nature, So again, don't think the professional, the therapist, the counselor, the minister, the priest haven't had trauma themselves. Okay? So let's try to be more transparent, and let's get the healing that we all need. Because we all need some type of healing. We need to become better versions of ourselves. And we know lying ain't helping, because lying is directly associated with shame, pride, guilt, and embarrassment. So we all fall short of this. So it's important that we understand, be transparent, and be less judgmental. So that's what I wanted to discuss tonight. I hope that you guys got something out of it. I hope that, bad timing. I hope that you guys got something out of it. I hope that it was empowering. I hope that you learned. And if you have any issues, or you want some coaching, you want to address the issues that you have, please go to www.brothersuave.com. And if you appreciated the social therapy session tonight, please cash out $SUAVERLKER. That's $Suave R Walker. And so I just want you guys to remember, great minds reach great places. I love you. I mean it. Bye-bye. Suave afternoon, suave afternoon, suave afternoon. This is Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality, life coach, psychotherapist, author, and creator. So it is so many benefits to being proactive. I remember during the recession, I would hear people saying, listen, I need a job. And they wouldn't hire people who need it. And the person, they hired a person who had a job and they applied for another job as opposed to, I don't have a job.
That's time to look for a job is when you already have one.
Yes. And again, Brother Frederick was saying this, I try not to get so caught up on religious philosophy and how spiritual are, but a foundation is so important because it gives you some morals and values. No matter if you're Muslim, a Catholic, or a Jehovah's Witness, or a Christian, or a Baptist, or whatever, you have to have respect. You can't do that. You can't do that stuff. And so we teach them emotional intelligence, teach them how to think about things before they react. Can't be impulsive. These are some of the learned behaviors as you listen. Just remember, great minds reach great places. I love you. I mean it. Bye-bye.
Tune in and stream live now. Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, the podcast, is now being broadcast on NPN Voice. NPN Voice can be found on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, and now on Audible and Amazon Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, the podcast, now on NPN Voice. NPN Voice. Got voice. You heard?